You didn't stumble into the gym by accident. Something put you there. And if you grew up in the 90s, there's a good chance that something was a movie, not a motivational speech, not a self-help book, a movie, probably one you watched 100 times on VHS, late at night, on a TV that weighed more than you did. And somewhere between the explosions and the one-liners, something shifted. You saw a body on screen that didn't just look strong. It looked like it earned the right to exist. And a quiet thought crept in, I want to look like that. This wasn't a trend. It was a cultural reprogramming. The 90s changed how an entire generation thought about muscle, discipline, and what it meant to be physically powerful. Before social media, before fitness influencers, before anyone had a transformation page, these movies did the work. They showed you bodies that weren't explained. They were displayed. No coaches breaking down rep ranges. No meal plans. Just sheer visual force that made you want to start doing push-ups the second the credits rolled. But here's the thing most people miss. Not all of these movies sold strength the same way. Some made you want to be massive. Others made you want to be fast and shredded. Some glorified brute power. Others made lean muscle look like a weapon. The 90s gave us 10 different visions of what a powerful body could be, and every single one of them left a mark. This video is about those movies. Not just what they look like, but how they worked on you. Why Schwarzenegger's arms in one film hit differently than Van Damme's legs in another. Why some physiques made you want to lift heavy, while others made you want to strip down every ounce of fat until your veins showed. Each film had its own blueprint, its own version of strength, and its own way of crawling into your head and staying there. These are the 90s movies that made everyone want to get jacked, and exactly how they did it. Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991. When Terminator 2 hit theaters in 1991, it didn't just become the biggest action movie of the year. It reset what audiences expected a powerful body to look like. Arnold Schwarzenegger had already built his legacy in the 80s, but this was different. This was Arnold at 43 years old, still massive, still dense, still looking like something built in a factory rather than born. And for millions of viewers, that image became the new ceiling. The opening scene did most of the work. The T-800 arrives naked, rising from a crouch in harsh blue light, every muscle visible. No warm-up, no slow reveal, just a wall of tissue that looked like it had been carved from stone and programmed to destroy. That visual didn't just introduce a character. It imprinted an ideal. If you were a teenager watching this on VHS in your basement, that image stayed with you. It didn't ask if you wanted to be big. It showed you what big looked like and let you sit with the distance between yourself and that. What made Terminator 2 different from earlier Schwarzenegger films was the restraint. The Terminator wasn't a warrior. He wasn't emotional. He was a machine, and his physique reinforced that. Every movement was efficient. Every muscle seemed to serve a function. There was no posing, no flexing for the camera. His body was treated as a tool, which somehow made it more aspirational, not less. You weren't watching a man show off. You were watching mass emotion, doing exactly what it was designed to do. This was the movie that made people believe that serious muscle wasn't about ego. It was about capability. The T-800 didn't talk about being strong. He just was. And that silence, that certainty, became the template for how an entire generation thought a powerful man should carry himself. Big, quiet, and undeniable. Terminator 2 didn't just make people want to get jacked. It made them believe that being jacked meant something. Rocky IV, 1990 home video / cultural carryover. Rocky IV was technically released in 1985, but the 90s were when it truly embedded itself into the culture. Home video made it permanent. Kids who weren't even born when it premiered were watching it on repeat, studying every training montage like it held the secret to becoming something greater. And in a way, it did. This wasn't just a boxing movie. It was a physique war. On one side, Sylvester Stallone at his most shredded, training in the snow, chopping wood, sprinting up mountains. On the other, Dolph Lundgren as Ivan Drago, 6'5", 260 pounds, engineered to look like the future of human performance. The contrast was deliberate and devastating. One man looked like effort. The other looked like inevitability. And audiences didn't know which one they wanted to be, so they wanted to be both. The training montages in Rocky IV are some of the most rewatched scenes in film history. Not because of the story, because of the visuals. Stallone doing sit-ups hanging from a barn ceiling. Drago hooked up to machines, monitored by scientists, built like a lab experiment. One sequence promised that hard work could build a warrior. The other whispered that maybe science could build something better. Either way, you left that movie wanting to train harder than you ever had. What Rocky forgave in the 90s wasn't just inspiration. It was a framework. The idea that transformation was possible. That pain had a purpose. That your body could become a weapon if you put in enough work. Stallone didn't look like a superhero. He looked like a man who had destroyed himself to be ready. And that image, sweating, bleeding, refusing to quit, became the visual definition of discipline for an entire generation. Rocky IV didn't tell you to get in shape. It showed you what getting in shape looked like when nothing else mattered. Predator, 1990s reruns and legacy impact. Predator came out in 1987, but the 90s turned it into a cultural monument. Cable television played it endlessly. Video stores kept it in constant rotation. And every time it aired, a new wave of viewers encountered the same unforgettable image. A squad of the most jacked men ever assembled on screen, walking into a jungle like they owned it. The cast wasn't just fit, it was absurd. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura, Bill Duke, Sonny Landham. Every one of them looked like they'd been lifting for a decade before the cameras even started rolling. The movie didn't explain it. It didn't justify it. These men were simply massive, and the film treated that as a given. No origin story for the muscles. No gym scenes. Just bodies that looked like they were built for exactly this kind of war. The famous handshake scene between Arnold and Carl Weathers became iconic for a reason. Two forearms, flexed to the limit, muscles bulging, veins visible, capturing a shot that lasted just long enough to burn into your memory. It was a greeting, but it looked like a contest. Two men silently measuring each other by the only metric that mattered. That image circulated for decades. It became a meme, a reference point, a visual shorthand for what real strength looked like. Predator taught a generation that being strong wasn't about showing off. It was about being ready. These soldiers didn't lift for aesthetics. They lifted to survive. Their bodies weren't decorations. They were armor. That reframe changed how people thought about muscle. It wasn't vanity. It was preparation. And if you were a kid watching this on a Saturday afternoon in 1994, you didn't walk away wanting a beach body. You walked away wanting a body that could fight back. Universal Soldier, 1992. By 1992, audiences thought they'd seen every version of the action hero physique. Then Universal Soldier arrived and introduced something new. Two massive bodies in direct opposition, designed to destroy each other. Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren, both at their physical peaks, both engineered as reanimated super soldiers. The premise was ridiculous. The physiques were not. Van Damme had always been known for his legs and his flexibility, but Universal Soldier pushed him into new territory. He was thicker here, denser, moving with less flash and more force. His body looked functional in a way it hadn't before, like it was designed for combat, not competition. He still had the definition, still had the lines, but now there was weight behind them. This was a movie where Van Damme proved he could carry mass without losing his trademark agility. Lundgren, meanwhile, played the villain as a wall of muscle with no restraint. His physique in this film was intimidating not because it was pretty, but because it looked dangerous. He moved slower, hit harder, and every frame he occupied felt heavier. The contrast between the two men gave audiences a choice. You could be fast and powerful, or you could be big and unstoppable. Either way, you had to train. Universal Soldier had more shirtless combat than almost any film of its era, and every scene reinforced the same message. These bodies were built to do damage. There was no glamour here, just sweat, impact, and survival. The movie didn't make you dream about looking good at the beach. It made you think about what it would take to be hard to kill. That shift from aesthetics to durability stuck with a lot of viewers. Sometimes the goal isn't to look strong. The goal is to be strong. Whatever comes. Bloodsport cult 90s popularity. Bloodsport was released in 1988, but became a 90s phenomenon through relentless cable airings, video rentals, and word of mouth. It was the movie you discovered at a friend's house, watched 3 times in a row, and then tried to replicate in the backyard. And the reason was simple. Jean-Claude Van Damme's physique looked like something anyone could achieve if they worked hard enough. Van Damme in Bloodsport wasn't massive. He was shredded. His muscle bellies were round, his waist was tight, and his legs looked like they could snap a tree in half. But the proportions were human. He didn't look like a comic book character. He looked like an athlete who had mastered his own body. And that relatability made him dangerous. Because if he could do it, maybe you could too. The tournament structure of Bloodsport gave audiences dozens of different body types to compare. Barrel-chested brawlers, wiry strikers, massive grapplers. And in the middle of all of them, Van Damme, not the biggest, not the tallest, but the most complete. His physique wasn't about one thing. It was about everything. Speed, power, flexibility, endurance. That combination became the new goal for a generation of young men who didn't just want to look strong. They wanted to move strong. The training sequences in Bloodsport emphasized control, not chaos. Van Damme doing the splits between 2 chairs. Van Damme blindfolded, catching objects out of the air. The message was clear. Real strength isn't just about size. It's about mastery. And that idea hit different for people who didn't want to be bodybuilders. They wanted to be martial artists, fighters, athletes. Bloodsport showed them a body that could do things. And that was worth more than all the mass in the world. Rambo, First Blood Part 2, 90s TV dominance. First Blood Part 2 premiered in 1985, but it dominated 90s television like few action films before or since. Cable networks aired it constantly, often edited for content but never for impact. And the impact was always the same. Sylvester Stallone, glistening with sweat and oil, muscles coiled, bow drawn, looking like war itself had taken human form. Stallone's physique in this film remains one of the most referenced in action movie history. He wasn't just lean, he was peeled. Every striation visible, every vein mapped. His body fat looked like it was in single digits. And the camera never let you forget it. The poster alone, Rambo shirtless, bandana tight, machine gun ready, became one of the most iconic images of 80s and 90s masculinity. You didn't need to see the movie to feel its effect. That image was everywhere. What Rambo represented was the power of leanness over size. Stallone wasn't the biggest guy on screen, but he looked like he'd been through something. His muscles didn't look built. They looked earned, forged by suffering, refined by survival. That gave his physique a different kind of aspirational weight. You didn't want to look like Rambo because it was glamorous. You wanted to look like Rambo because it meant you could endure anything. Throughout the 90s, this film played in living rooms, barracks, and basement gyms around the world. It taught people that being shredded wasn't about the beach. It was about being ready. Rambo didn't pose. He acted. His body was a byproduct of the mission, not the point. And that idea, that leanness was a form of discipline, not vanity, changed how a lot of people approach their own training. Rambo didn't sell aesthetics. He sold toughness. Batman Forever, 1995. Nobody expected a Batman movie to change how people thought about physiques. But in 1995, Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever put a different kind of body on screen, and it left a mark that outlasted the film itself. Val Kilmer's Bruce Wayne was lean, angular, and sculpted in a way that felt less superhero and more runway. The Batsuit in this film was redesigned with exaggerated musculature, including the infamous molded abs and defined chest plates. It was ridiculous, it was theatrical, and it worked. The suit became a statement. Even Batman needed to look like he lifted. But the real physique conversation came from Chris O'Donnell as Robin and, even more so, from the film's visual language. The camera lingered on bodies in ways that previous Batman films hadn't. Close-ups of armored torsos, slow pans across sculpted arms. The film treated the male body like an object worth admiring, and that shifted something in mainstream audiences. Men weren't just supposed to be strong, they were supposed to be aesthetic. This was a different kind of jacked. Not the mass monsters of Predator. Not the shredded warriors of Rambo. Batman Forever sold the idea of a polished physique. Clean lines, symmetry, definition without bulk. It was aspirational in a way that felt achievable for people who didn't want to be huge. They just wanted to look sharp. And in 1995, that was a new goal for a lot of people who had never considered that kind of training. Batman Forever might not be remembered as a great film, but it pushed the male physique further into the spotlight than any superhero movie before it. It made muscle mainstream in a way that wasn't about combat or survival. It was about appearance, and that opened a door that fitness culture would walk through for the next 3 decades. Blade, 1998. Before the Marvel Cinematic Universe existed, there was Blade. And before superhero movies learned how to show powerful bodies, Wesley Snipes set the standard in black leather and silence. Snipes in Blade was unlike any action hero physique of the decade. He wasn't bulky. He wasn't a mass monster. He was tight, fast, and dangerously athletic. His shoulders were capped. His arms were dense. His midsection was armored with visible abs that didn't scream gym rat. They whispered killer. This was the body of someone who trained for speed and violence in equal measure. The opening nightclub scene established everything audiences needed to know. Blade walks through chaos like it doesn't concern him. He moves with precision, strikes without wasted motion, and never once looks like he's trying. Snipes' martial arts background gave every action scene authenticity, and the physique backed it up. You believed he could do everything you were watching. That believability made the inspiration hit harder. What Blade introduced was the concept of the functional action body. Snipes didn't look like he trained for size. He looked like he trained for execution. Every muscle served a purpose. Every movement was economical. His body wasn't a trophy. It was a toolkit. And that idea resonated with a generation of viewers who wanted to look capable, not just big. Blade also brought something new to representation. A black superhero, ripped and dominant, carrying an entire blockbuster on his shoulders. For a lot of young viewers, this was the first time they'd seen someone who looked like them in this kind of role, and that mattered. Blade didn't just make people want to get jacked. It showed them that Jack could look like them. Fight Club 1999. Fight Club wasn't supposed to be a fitness movie, but Brad Pitt's physique in David Fincher's 1999 masterpiece launched more gym memberships than any training montage ever could. Pitt played Tyler Durden as a contradiction, chaotic and narcic destructive, but his body told a different story. It was controlled, disciplined. Every muscle was visible, but none of them were excessive. He looked like he'd been carved down to the essentials, with nothing left that didn't need to be there. It was the opposite of the mass monsters who had dominated the decade, and for a lot of viewers, it was exactly what they wanted. The shirtless fight scenes were raw, unglamorous, and unforgettable. Pitt moved like a man who had trained his body to take damage and deliver it back. His physique wasn't about intimidation. It was about efficiency, low body fat, visible abs, shoulders and arms that looked built for function, not show. This was the lean, aesthetic ideal that would dominate fitness culture for the next 20 years. What made Fight Club so influential was its context. Tyler Durden rejected consumerism, rejected vanity, rejected everything the mainstream sold, and yet his body became the most desired physique of the era. That contradiction didn't weaken the message, it strengthened it. People didn't want to look like Durden because he told them to. They wanted to look like him because his body represented freedom from excess. Nothing extra, nothing wasted, just what you needed to fight. Fight Club taught an entire generation that being jacked didn't require being huge. It required being stripped down. And that idea, that less could be more, redefined what a lot of people were chasing when they walked into the gym. The Matrix, 1999. The 90s ended with a movie that rewrote every rule about action and aesthetics. The Matrix didn't just change cinema, it changed how people thought about what a powerful body could do. Keanu Reeves was not the most muscular actor in Hollywood, but his transformation for The Matrix was undeniable. He dropped body fat, added lean muscle, and trained in martial arts until his movements looked effortless. The result was a physique that prioritized agility over size. and that resonated with audiences who had grown tired of watching muscle-bound giants lumber through action scenes. The lobby shootout, the rooftop chase, the bullet dodge. Every iconic scene reinforced the same idea. Speed wins. Neo's body wasn't built to overpower. It was built to outmaneuver. And that shift, from brute strength to kinetic precision, opened up a new aspiration. You didn't have to be the biggest guy in the room. You had to be the fastest, the most prepared, the most adaptable. The Matrix also introduced mainstream audiences to wire-fu aesthetics, which demanded a different kind of physicality. Reeves trained for months not just to fight, but to fly. His body had to be light enough to look weightless, but strong enough to perform. That balance, athletic, lean, capable, became the new blueprint for action physiques entering the 2000s. What The Matrix proved was that muscle alone wasn't enough anymore. Audiences want to see bodies that move like weapons, not just look like them. And Keanu Reeves, in his long coat and shades, became the unlikely icon of that evolution. He made people want to train differently, not just to lift, but to move. And that change echoed far beyond the decade that made it possible. None of these movies set you down and told you to work out. None of them explained rep ranges, macro splits, or optimal recovery. They didn't have to. They showed you bodies that looked like they had been through something, built, shredded, trained beyond comfort, and past the point of quitting. They didn't explain how. They just let you sit with the image long enough for it to settle in. And for millions of people, that was enough. What the 90s understood was that inspiration doesn't always need words. Sometimes it needs a visual so strong it rewires your sense of what's possible. A flexed arm in low light, a shirtless sprint through hostile terrain, a fighter standing still while everything explodes around him. These images weren't instructions. They were blueprints imprinted through repetition, burned into the subconscious of everyone who watched. Each of these films offered a different version of strength. Some sold mass, some sold speed, some sold leanness, athleticism, intimidation, or control. But all of them shared one thing. They made you believe that your body could become something more than it was. That transformation wasn't a fantasy. It was a choice waiting to be made. These were the movies that made everyone want to get jacked. Not because they promised easy results, but because they showed you what hard work looked like when it paid off, and trusted you to figure out the rest on your own.